I'm Jenny, coach and NLP practitioner, helping people thrive, not just survive, helping introverts beat fear and self-doubt, and helping people have the relationships that they really want in life. This weekend, I spent the whole day gardening with Matt, and one of the things I thought as we were contentedly digging alongside each other, and I was pulling out weeds and he was doing all the heavy manual stuff, was that I stayed in a bad relationship because I didn't want to lose that. And that was a really striking thought for me. There were so many little things that kept me in quite a bad relationship. We loved the same food, we loved sharing food, we gardened together, we travelled really well together, and actually we had a good friendship before we became a relationship, and we were friends for quite a while. And I didn't want to lose those things, so I stayed. So even though the relationship and the foundations of the relationship were not what I wanted and were not particularly good, there were just some moments within it that were so special to me. And things like gardening was something that actually I developed and grew a new love of gardening that I'd never had before. Gardening was just a pain to me, and I've got a huge garden. So it was quite annoying. And having that love, and I thought, well, those were the days I really enjoyed within that relationship, so I stayed. And it was much less important to me that I felt lonely a lot of the time, and it was less important that I didn't feel particularly loved. It was less important that I didn't feel protected in any way, and it was less important that I spent many nights on my own in tears or with the person in tears. I was so afraid of losing those nice little moments and the things that we did together, and I wasn't completely sure that I would find someone else who did like those things. And what I now know is that person does exist. We do love the same food, we love to wander around old buildings, we love to garden side by side, we love to share food, and this time I've also got all the other stuff as well, the foundations of the relationship that I really wanted to have. I've also got that as well. And one of the things I thought in my last relationship was that it could get better. All those foundational things would get better, and in a lot of ways it did. But it was more a case of giving me something small to appease me until the next time. And there were lots of promises that never happened. But because there was occasional little thing and things did shift and move, it was enough for me to think, that's it. And the next step, we've done that other little next thing. So I kept staying for all these really kind of surface level hobby type things, thinking that someone else was not going to be out there for me that would satisfy those desires that I had. One of the things I am sure about, and I really am sure about it, is that I wasn't afraid of being on my own at all. That didn't bother me. Even though I did find a new partner fairly quickly, it wasn't the being alone that was the issue, because I'd been alone essentially for quite a long time. So when did I get to the point where I decided not to tolerate that relationship anymore, and all of those things that I enjoyed doing with the other person just weren't enough? And it was the moment, and there'd been many moments like this, but this one, it was at the end of my NLP qualification, and it was a really emotional time, and we really dug deep into our subconscious mind and all sorts of habits and things that we'd done. And I completed my course, and my partner at the time, we were on FaceTime, and I was crying because it was a really emotional release during the NLP. It's a very emotional course to do when you're learning NLP. And so I was sat crying, and he looked at his watch on FaceTime and he said, I've got to go because my neighbour's got a cup of tea waiting for me. And at that point, I just thought, this is happening again. Like, nothing is ever going to change. And I just knew that I deserved more. And I kept thinking the whole time, why am I not enough? Why am I not enough for this person? And I had to realise that I had to be enough for myself. And it wasn't about being enough for another person. It was about being enough for me. And whatever hobbies we had and all the nice things we could do, I could do those on my own if I wanted to. I didn't have to tolerate a bad relationship just to do those nice things. So the first thing I did was buy myself a ring that says I am enough on it, just to remind myself every day. I have a reminder on my hand to say I am enough. I know I am enough. And that I was not being too needy. My expectations were not too high. And I could be okay wherever I was. But this tolerating was just squashing me down. And I'd been told often that I was too needy, my expectations were too high, and I started to believe it. And all it bottomed down to was that we wanted different things from our relationship. And that's no fault of anybody's. It's not my fault. It's not their fault. It's just, it is what it is. We wanted different things. So in the short time I was single, I enjoyed every minute of it, actually. I loved it. I went for walks. I watched whatever I wanted to on TV. I did the house when I wanted. I felt no pressure to have to find someone to have the kids and to be with that person. Everything was very simple, straightforward and easy. So it would have been really easy to stay in that space. And I think if I stayed there too long, I maybe have been single for a very long time, and that would have been okay too. I don't have a problem with that. But I knew deep down that the relationship I wanted was there waiting for me. When we talk about the law of attraction, and I talk about the fact I manifested my ideal man, I just knew that person that I wanted that relationship with was there. I had no doubt about that. And so one of the things I had to do was make sure I was in the best possible place for my own mindset for somebody new. And I've done loads of that work with NLP. I did a dating course with Jordan Blue. She does Love Life Hacks, and it was an amazing relationship course. And I did NLP and coaching and therapy. And so I'd done a lot of work to go into the next relationship. And I knew I had to do that extra work because I could not go into a new relationship with the same mindset that I'd had for the last, 20 years really. So I knew I had to do the work on myself. So the first thing I did to look at myself and the mindset that I had was I had to look at my communication first and what was I getting wrong. And the first thing I was getting wrong is that I was a brilliant, terrible mind reader. I was a terrible mind reader. I, of course, knew exactly what my partner was meaning without him saying anything. I would go off on a tangent. I would hold on to my beliefs until I exploded with frustration. So I'd keep everything in and I would think, he's done this, he means this, he said this, or he's not said this, it means this. So all of this stuff, like very general, vague stuff, means this. And I also had very little trust. So I never believed quite what they said as an explanation. And not being able to trust is a deal breaker for me now. I spent a lot of time not being able to trust. And if I can't trust my life partner, I know now it's game over. Why didn't I know that before? I really don't know. But if I'm not willing to believe someone else and my gut is screaming, no, this is not right, it is game over. It has to be. And how many of you out there are, you don't trust, but you stay there and you stay there and you don't trust and you don't believe. And then all the mind reading comes out and the gremlins come out and you start like the mind chatter and you believe that they are saying this thing and it's not true. And it's just exhausting. And the other thing I also had to look at was how I said things. I wasn't very clear. I really wasn't. So I hope that they were a better mind reader than I was. And of course, none of us are. We're all pretty rubbish. And I would hope they would get it right because let's face it, like if it's your life partner and they're supposed to be with you, surely they should be able to know what I want and mind read me. And we all do this. We have this romantic notion that if you're with the perfect person, that we should automatically have this osmosis going on between our brains and this telepathy, and it's crazy thinking. Like, how many of you do this? It is crazy thinking. We cannot imagine what someone else is thinking or how they're going to respond. So when I wasn't clear with my partner, was actually setting them up to fail. There was always going to be a disappointment because they didn't read my mind correctly. And at that point I was like, oh, it was really draining. So how many times have you set your partner up to fail because they were unable to accurately guess something that you wanted to guess? So you say you're going out, where do you want to go for dinner? And you say, I don't mind. And you do mind. And then you get really cross with your partner because they've chosen somewhere that you didn't want to go. How many times has that happened? Or a movie. And they think they're doing the right thing by making a decision, and actually you end up feeling really cross with them because they haven't guessed correctly. So clear communication was something I've had to work on quite a lot because I know I was vague with lots of expectations of them guessing what I wanted all the time. Matt talks about Matt talks about this with me because he says, I know on the days when you're trying not to bother me and when you're trying not to be clear with me because like you're worried about bothering me. He said, but it's much more bothersome. So on a normal day, you'll go, hey Matt, I'll send him a text or a message or whatever. Hey Matt, can you just look at this? Can you do this? This is happening. And he'll call me and or I'll call him straight away and we get the thing done. But he says, on the days when you're worried about interrupting me and you're worried about me like not getting in my way, he said, it's like you come up behind me and go, hey, excuse me. Hello? I don't mean to bother you. Tap me on the shoulder. Well, he's like, and it's really annoying. He says, I just want you to tell me, and then I can respond or not respond or do my thing or whatever. Just be clear. So but he has been able to explain it to me in a really great way, because when he was here and he was doing that excuse me thing, it was really irritating me. And he said, that's what you do when you're not clear with me and you're worried about upsetting me and you're tiptoeing around. It's like that. Excuse me, hello. He said, it's really irritating. When you just come out and you're clear as anything, it's fine, which is how I am now most of the time. In the past, I was that, excuse me, person all the time. I wouldn't say what I wanted. And actually it's really, really irritating. And I'm doing it to be kind, to be helpful. And Matt has explained to me it is not at all helpful. So apart from the stopping the mind reading business and the clear communication, how else did I improve? And one of the things was I started to ask more questions. And I talk about questions all the time, but they have to be the right kind of questions. So instead of guessing, I would say, you know how you mentioned X? What did you mean by that? And not in a, what did you mean by that? Not in a really bad way, but in a positive, genuine interest, curiosity way. So what did you mean by that? Not what did you mean by that? Imagine, so your tone of voice is really important. And we know that only 7% of what we say is the words and everything else is body language and tone. So we've got to be really careful with our tone of voice. I would say how I felt in a really calm way. So I would say things like, you know how that happened? It made me feel like this. And I know you probably didn't mean it. I just wanted to let you know. And that gives the person the opportunity. So when your partner says, what's up with you? And you're like, nothing. And there clearly is. There's something up, but you don't want to say it. And sometimes you can't even articulate it. So it's not that you're necessarily being purposefully obstructive about it, but you haven't articulated it. So it's good to, at that point, what's up? And you can say, I don't really know at the moment, but I'm going to have to think about it. And when I can work out the words, I will come and tell you. Which is so much more positive than nothing. When there clearly is something. So even if you don't know, you can say, I don't really know. I'm really sorry. I'm just feeling this way at the moment, but give me a few minutes. I'm going to have a think about how I can explain it to you. And do it in a really calm way. I would also clarify things. So you know how you said X, whatever it was they said, can you just talk me through it again so I can understand? And that's another great way of losing the miscommunication. And that's, I mean, sometimes we miscommunicate. And at that point, there is no point in you saying, well, you said this, and them saying, no, I didn't. And them saying, well, yes, you did. And no, you didn't. You can just say, look, I think we just got a bit of a mix up. I'm really sorry. I obviously misunderstood what you were saying. And that's fine, because we will never, ever, unless you've had a tape recording, we'll never find out who was right and who was wrong. And it doesn't matter. You just say, I'm really sorry. I obviously misunderstood, or there was a miscommunication, and move on. So I would also listen to the responses carefully and accept it as truth, which is really important. So this is now because I have complete trust. So I know that what he's saying is true. And I will acknowledge what has been said to me and let them know that I believed them. So I wasn't very good at this in the past at all. I was always second guessing. I was always thinking, is that true? Or I don't believe you. And that's really actually very unfair in a relationship. If you're not going to believe what they're saying, you really want to question why you're in that relationship. So an example of this was a conversation a few months after me and Matt started dating, and my last partner had kept me a secret for 2 years, and he hadn't told his friends or his family about me for 2 years. And so when Matt didn't tell his dad about me, I was a bit triggered. I was just like, what's going on here? It brought up an old story for me. And this time I remembered everything I'd learned. And I just said, look, I'm feeling quite difficult about this due to my last experience. But I know there's a valid reason, and I trust you that there's a valid reason. And I don't want you to change anything. I just want you to explain to you that it's making me feel uneasy. And Matt's response was perfect. It was so open and clear and honest, and I knew it was right. And all my anxiety about that situation disappeared immediately. It just went. And in the past, I would have held on to that for a very, very long time. I'd have made up stories in my head. I'd have used it against them at a later date, and I'd have gone kaboom at some point, and it would have been emotional, and I would have felt terrible, and they would have felt terrible and defensive also, because they know what the reality is and they know why they were doing that, but I was guessing. So in the past, I would have guessed. I would have built it all up. It would have been like a big volcano. At some point it would have exploded. It would have been really, really unpleasant. So those were some of the main things that I did when I first started this new relationship that was different to what I'd done in the past. Very, very different for me. So what else can you do that can help you have a happy, healthy relationship moving forward? There's a few suggestions. One of them is to look at your past relationships or your current relationship and see what you are doing to respond to a situation. And I want you to write it down and look at it. And is this the way you would want someone to speak to you? Is it genuinely, honestly, are you being fair? Are you being rational? Are you being open and honest and clear? Or are you looking at that going, yeah, I could do better actually, and it's not necessarily very helpful the way I do that? And that's not to say that your partner doesn't have some play in that. I'm not saying that, but it's always better to start with looking at ourselves and going, okay, what could we do differently? When we do things differently, our partners have no other option than to respond in a different way, because if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. We know that Einstein says it's the definition of insanity. But if you change things, the response is not going to come back in the same way. Look at where it could be coming from. So is it learned behaviour? Is it from parents perhaps? Or, what did you see in relationships growing up? Is it from fear for yourself of losing a person, of being alone? Where is the fear? Is it from mistrust? Are you not trusting what they're saying? And what is it about it? Are you mistrusting it because they've done something to create that mistrust? Are you mistrusting them because of a previous partner that you didn't trust? So where is the mistrust coming from? And is it because you don't love yourself? So sometimes when we don't love ourselves, we feel like we're not enough. It's because we feel we're not worthy. So we test other people all the time, because when we're testing them and we're being awkward, we're looking for them to come back and say, no, it's okay, we love you. We're going to stay with you no matter what you do. You can be horrendous to me. I don't care. I'll still stay. And that's not realistic and it's not fair. If we treat people badly, why should they stay in that situation? So just look at where those things are coming from. If you're looking for a new relationship, first it's helpful to revisit your previous ones. So one of the things I did, which was in Jordan's program, was to write down a list of all my main past relationships. And I wrote down everything that was good about them, everything that was bad about them. So what bit of the relationship did I like? What bit did I not like? And then I wrote down good personality traits and less good, the ones that didn't resonate and weren't very nice and made me uncomfortable. And then when you've got a list of all your relationships, you can look at which ones are common good traits and which ones are common bad traits. And you can get a good image of what you have been attracting in your past relationships. And then, of course, it's time to look at what you then want instead. So this is what you've been having and getting and attracting and receiving, and this is what you would prefer to have instead. So now you have an overview of where you habitually go in a relationship, which bit suits you, which bits don't. And one of the best ways you can start today is to download my free 40 questions to ask in a new relationship. It was the way I started with Matt. Again, I got a lot of the questions from my course with Jordan, but they're all based on decades worth of research. And then I added some of my own in and I've changed them to be a bit more UK friendly. Most of my clients are in the UK, and so I've made some alterations, and it'll just give you a clear idea of where you are in a relationship. So look at the questions first and answer them for yourself before you start asking someone else. And you'll get a really clear idea of what you're looking for and whether it's in a new relationship or your current one. So you could be having trouble in your current one and look at these questions, go, that's not been answered. I've not asked that question. I need to know the answer to that question. And again, look at your tone of voice. How are you asking things? Are you being aggressive and confrontational and with high expectation of them? Because sometimes these questions are tricky. You know, they're deep questions, and not everybody, my ex-partner would not have liked answering them at all. He would have felt like I was grilling him and trying to trick him, which I wouldn't have been. It's just pure interest. So I started off my new relationship with these questions, and it was a brilliant way. So you start and you don't have those nagging doubts because you've had them all answered really, really early on. And it might feel a lot. So this is a lot to take in. I absolutely understand that this video is slightly longer and there's a lot of work and there's a lot to take in, but just take your time, work through it one step at a time, pause the video, write some notes, go on my website and look at the article that goes with it, and just spend some time looking at where you have been and where you want to go. So now you know that if you're worried about not having the same hobbies with a new person and there's bits that you like with your current partner, but the relationship itself is not actually what you want, there is someone out there who will still like those things and be able to do those things with you, but might be able to give you more than that. So it's always possible, and I've given you a whole list of tools that you can put into practice and start using for either your current relationship or a new one. So they work for both. If you enjoy what you've been listening to, please remember to subscribe, hit the buttons, the bells and all the rest of it, and I would love you to see you again. And always remember to have a powerful day.